This is episode number 38 of DevOps Paradox with Darren Pope and Victor Farsick. I am Darren.
And I am Victor.
Today we're going to talk about how important are people to a company. Well, number one, you have to have people to have a company.
So they're very important.
Yeah, but how important are having the right people in a company? This question came out of the Docker episode, and your statement was, and I'm not going to rehash it because it was a little harsh, but a lot of the people that you knew at Docker are gone. There's only a couple of people left there that you know. So Docker is no longer the Docker that you knew.
Yes. And that... Let me start by stating from the very beginning, that's not necessarily bad. It might actually be a good thing. But so that statement that I made needs to be combined with another statement, and that is that. So let me state it from the beginning. Most of the people I know from Docker are not there anymore. They left, and I'm not very happy with the new Docker. So if I would be happy with new Docker, then that's not really an issue that people left. And that would be a welcome change. But that's not the case.
No, but this is sort of like a sports team turning over every year. Contracts run out, people leave, people get traded, right? It's that concept of, man, if you're an NBA fan listening, Golden State basically owned everything for the past 5 years. But then they've had a bunch of injuries, people have left, and now Golden State's at the bottom of the ranks.
Exactly.
It's what it is. So the same thing happens in normal businesses as well, not just sports teams.
Exactly. And then you can, I'm not watching really sports, but I guess that you could find a different example where actually many of the players changed and then they won some World Cup or whatever they're supposed to win, right? And then you would not be discussing that change, right? You would be happy with that change. But the key, I think, is that, so you need to balance few things. You cannot... I'm going to keep sport analogy, even though I know nothing about sports, so you correct me. You cannot keep the same players forever and ever because the time comes to change the strategy and they're not well equipped with that strategy, or they might be too old or too whatever, right? So you cannot keep the players forever. You need to be replacing them. But you cannot replace the whole team in one season because then there is no continuity. Right? Because then you would be forming a completely new team. You would not be benefiting from the history of the team you're changing. So you need to be changing players, but it needs to be intelligent change and it needs to be gradual change. And all that cannot be a change because players are not happy with the team and went somewhere else. Right? So those are the few things that needs to be taken into account.
I think the big part to this is the people make the culture of a company. Some HR arms, and if any of our favorite HR people are listening, I apologize. But HR thinks they mandate a 5-slide deck. Hey, here's the company culture, and this is the way it is. I'm sorry, that's bogus. Culture is defined by the people and by the groups and the interactions between those groups. And until that, and that makes the company, whether it's good or bad, you can look at the Ubers of the world that were very toxic, at least from the outside. But I'm sure there were some good pockets within Uber. But overall, it's got a reputation of toxic. You had Docker, which was, I'm not singling out Docker for right now, but it's just because we've been talking about them. You had Docker pre the Maranta sale that was pretty good. And now you have what's left of Docker after the Maranta sale, and it's, in Victor's opinion, and I don't know anybody there personally, not so good. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say actually not so good happened long before Mirante's sale. But
Okay, fair enough. So at some point there was an inflection point that caused a change.
yes.
And what do you think that change was specifically for Docker?
The realization that you cannot run on thin air and that you need to start generating some profit. And that realization came so fast that there was no other decision that could be made except go 100% for profit and neglecting everything that made Docker great. So that's the change. And I understand why people left, and I understand why that decision was made. I would make the same decision. The real problem is that that decision wasn't made earlier when Docker could live in both worlds.
So we'll try not to beat on Docker anymore, but we're using them to sort of as a case study here. But the importance of people to a company, and I'm going to sort of massage that a little bit. Importance of people to a culture. Not everyone fits into specific cultures. I am a white middle-aged guy living in the suburbs of North Carolina. Victor's a Serbian living in Barcelona. Right? There's different culture. If we were to transplant both of us, like if we were to switch places, I would not transition as well as probably Victor would here, because Victor adapts very well.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know about that, but
that's what I'm saying. The reason why I was telling that story, is sometimes within a company, it's like, oh, I'll just go change which group I'm working in and everything will be better. And that may be true or it may not be true.
yes. So in a bigger company, we cannot say that there is no single culture, single process in a bigger company. So that, yes, one group can be better than the other.
Define a bigger company.
Anything beyond 500,000.
Okay. More than 500 people. Okay.
I would say so, maybe. And I'm talking about now engineering size, not the overall size of the company, right? But before entering into culture, my first question would be, do you, dear company X, do you consider engineering to be a skilled profession or unskilled? And let me give you an answer that don't think about it. Do you send everything to third parties and count success by how many hundreds or thousands of people you employed, if that's more the most important criteria? If that's the case, you think that this is unskilled work. And then everything else is irrelevant, kind of like you're not discussing culture of the company that is doing cleaning services in your company because you think that they're irrelevant as long as things somehow don't end up being too messy. You're happy with them, right? So all that talk about culture to me applies only if the company thinks software is important, it requires highly skilled people, and then we can discuss the rest. Before that, it's irrelevant. Before the company gets to that point.
So let's go back to your first one. The company is, let's call it, overly enthusiastic about outsourcing software development. I'm not saying that it's bad to outsource some stuff, right? It may be, hey, this is a new thing that we're doing. We don't have the skill set. Let's bring in some people to help do that. Get us learned, if you will.
Yeah, but then ask yourself this. If you're an engineer, whatever your specialty is, do you want to work in a company that thinks that software is not important?
Well, of course not. Unless I'm just looking for a job.
Because if a company outsourced most of its workforce related to engineering, software engineering, then that company thinks that that's not really important. It does not matter what they tell you. It does not matter what they claim publicly. If it's outsourced, it's not important. It's as easy as that. There is no way that you will progress professionally in that environment. There is no way that you will build your career, that you will do the right thing in a company who thinks that it does not matter.
So how many of you listening right now just realized, oh crap, what am I doing here?
Or, oh crap, Victor is talking. One of the two things.
Yeah, I don't think you are. I think there's some. I don't know. I go as hard edge as you on that, but I see the point, because then at that within the company, basically your software engineering firm is nothing more than project managers and middle management.
I mean, okay, let's put it this way. Forget about software. It doesn't exist. Can you imagine now in your head a company? Think about a company, a real company. Now, tell me, which jobs do you think that they are externalizing, and do they matter? Are they their business?
Usually they don't have. So facilities is usually outsourced, meaning facilities maintenance.
Doesn't matter. Cleaning doesn't matter. Repairing stuff does not matter as long as it's done. You're focusing on your business. And software is not your business because you externalize it. And don't fool yourself saying that, oh yeah, because I work for the company who does provide services to that company. The end user thinks it doesn't matter, but my company is very professional. We are Capgemini of the world. Same thing. They're selling you for price per hour. Doesn't matter.
Ouch. So, if you're working for a consulting firm, is that really what you want to do? If you're working for a company that you're mostly outsourcing everything and you're the last one, you're the one that has to deal with the mess that's being dropped in your plate and you have to operate it, do you really want to do that?
I mean, do you have options? If you have options, then your question is valid. I understand fully that many people don't have options. You can be living in a city, in a country where actually that's the only business. And I understand that completely and I respect that. But if you do have options, then please run away.
And we're focusing here on the engineering part of it, but I believe this is true. And you've called it out. If a company's outsourcing the big chunks of it. Now, our case in point, and I've worked for numbers of companies that have done this, you outsource payroll, right? That's a good one to outsource because that doesn't not need to be a core feature of your business unless maybe you have 500,000 employees.
Yeah. It's not going to make you more competitive on the market if you have that in-house. But software, I mean, tell me the company that does not compete one way or another with software. Not only with software, I understand that. But that software is not important. Show me that company. It doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist. Well, you think about it, even though we say there are monopolies, okay, I guess to a point that's true, but even there's two major aircraft providers, Boeing and Airbus, right? So there's what's the competitive advantage of Boeing over Airbus or vice versa? They're selling contracts and getting planes into people's hands or aircraft, right?
And those planes run software.
Yes, they do.
I mean, they take off without human. I mean, I might be wrong, but my understanding is that pilots are in planes now just in case.
Close, but close enough.
And I'm not downgrading now. It takes a lot of effort and skill to be a pilot. I'm not saying against that, but it's mostly automated. Of course, now what differentiates one pilot from another is when things go wrong, do you know what to do or not? So there is a huge value in being a pilot, but software matters there a lot. Now, whether somebody is going to buy Boeing over Airbus based on software, I'm not in that industry. I don't know that, but it does matter.
No, it's probably a bad example, but the point of it was those are, it gets back to, and the other one to think about too is, McDonald's isn't in the hamburger business. They're in the real estate business because they go around and buy up all the land. I think Boeing and Airbus are in the aircraft business, at least big chunks of it.
The really key question is whether you realize that or not. And a good example for that is the car industry, which as industry until a few years ago did not realize that software matters at all. Nobody cares. Nobody cared, right? Until somebody came and said, this matter, we're going to build a car around software, which happens to be Tesla. And now everybody, all the car manufacturers are rushing to do that better, right? It's just that, so it's not that it didn't matter a few years ago, but nobody realized how much it matters. And somebody managed to profit from that realization.
Yeah, there's been software in cars for years. Plug in your OBD thing underneath the steering column and you'll get metrics. You'll get lots of metrics.
Yeah.
Now Tesla took that to a whole nother level. Now, whether that's good or bad is a whole nother conversation.
It's bad at the very beginning, and they're failing big time, but they're just starting with something, so I give them slack on that one.
But people make the company.
Yes.
If you're in a part of a company that's highly outsourced, which I have been before, and then we had to intake the products that were produced by the consulting firms, the whatevers, and we had to operate them. We were not very successful in operating those things. Just because we didn't know it. We knew it at least from an operational standpoint, but if we had to try to debug something, it's like, okay, now we got to get on a bridge call with somebody that's 12 hours in front of us, and their hours aren't our hours, so we're always having to work on off hours. It's no good, right? At some point, you get so much buildup on yourself at that point. It's like, okay, now you're headed towards burnout, and it's like, see you, bye.
Exactly, because there is that discrepancy, bad handoffs, nobody cares really, and all those things.
I did my part. Here's the fence. Throw it over. See you, bye.
I mean, okay, let's change. Let's state it this way. Now, Darren, think about, I'm going to give you like 15 seconds. 10 software companies you admire. Are you done?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, how many of them have considerable engineering effort outsourced?
Near zero.
There you go.
The bigs of the world, the Googles, the AWSs, as much as I hate to say it, Facebook, phenomenal engineering organizations. Now, whether or not they are healthy cultures is a different conversation.
Yes, that's a different. But at least they realize that that's important. Therefore, I'm not externalizing it. First step.
Yeah, but just because they give you 3 square meals a day does not mean it's a good place to work.
Yes, and it can be a bad place, and sometimes is, and all those. On the other hand, when I compare it with big enterprises that I've been visiting, heck, it's a good of a place to be. I mean, Netflix is and Google's and stuff like that. So you need to always compare it with something, right? I would rather work in AWS than in a typical Fortune 500 company enterprise. So all my dear clients, I'm sorry.
Because I still want to feel like I'm making a difference in what I do.
But you're doing consulting, and we're not talking about consulting in this episode at all.
Well, even as an employee, if I was an employee, I would still want to feel like I'm making an impact on the bottom line for the business.
Yes, and some do. There is always some impact. It's just that vast majority of us are really just not making any impact by writing getter setters.
Well, and that gets us. I think this is probably sort of the last pivot point. Is okay. You're in a place. You're 5 years from retirement, or you're just writing it out because the benefits are great. The company's probably not going to fire you because of the they think you're too good to be let go. But all it takes is one management change and you're gone by not your will, but somebody else's will. Then what do you do? Because if you've just been riding the seat thinking, oh, okay, I'm not going to have to worry about it. I've got a job for life or a job for at least a decade. And then all of a sudden you get that call. You find out how important you were to the company.
Exactly. Then again, it's not really bad. We are all pawns in some company. I'm a pawn in my company. I know that it's not bad. It's more that I see interest in being in a company I am right now. Because I help them, they help me. It's a mutual benefit, right?
But is there something else there? I hear something else in your voice.
I don't know. I always have different voices in my head, and I'm never sure which one is real and which one is not. So
I think that's a conversation for a different day. And I do not play a psychiatrist on TV, and we won't go there. So how important are people to a company?
Very. They should be very important, but in most companies they're not. That's the point.
Most companies think of all of us as being interchangeable.
Yes. And we are all interchangeable. We are all interchangeable, but the question is how easy or how expensive is to change us. It's not anybody can change me wherever I work. But it might be expensive.
Yep. The misconception, and again, I've already stepped on HR's feet, so I'll go ahead and step on recruiting's feet. The misconception that a full stack developer is a full stack developer is a full stack developer is not true.
There is no such thing that...
Well, okay, let's back that up. A Java developer is not a Java developer is not a Java developer. That's better, because full stack implies you know everything about everything, and it's really about 6 people's job. That's another conversation.
Yes.
But a Java developer that started learning Java in 96 is probably still stuck in the 1.1 ways and not the Java 11 ways of doing things today.
Yeah, but there's thousands of them, hundreds of them working on a project, so they're definitely going to come up with something that makes sense, right? That's the logic. You know, like that science experiment, if you put enough monkeys to type random things, will they ever write Shakespeare and things like that?
So if you are a hiring manager listening to this, be thoughtful about who you hire. If you are a person that has the purse strings and you're outsourcing everything, either keep outsourcing and get rid of all your developers so they're just not drug along.
You know, hiring managers are irrelevant in those stories, because hiring managers are hiring whatever the lead of that project is wants. So it's not really their fault. The fault is the guy you will be reporting to. He probably gave instructions to hiring manager, and hiring manager followed those instructions. So your future direct manager, he's the one to blame.
I think that's a pretty good place to stop right there.
Yes, I was about to start swearing, so let's stop first.
Well, you've already had one, so that's okay. That's okay. All right. So this was a little departure from norm. We'll talk about more tech stuff next, but if you're in a company that is outsourcing everything and you feel unappreciated, there's a reason why you're not appreciated. You're just another cog in the wheel or another brick in the wall, for a quick little Pink Floyd reference today. If you want to contact us, boy, this one might fire up some people. You can reach out to us. All of our contact information is at devopsparadox.com/contact. There'll be a link for it to that page down in the show notes. I think it's probably a good way to wrap it up. That was a pretty sad and harsh episode. But angry old white guy, right? And I sound angry, right?
If you sound angry, how do I sound?
You sound like a Serbian that lives in Spain. Okay, thanks again for listening to episode number 38 of DevOps Paradox.